Hello everybody, welcome back to Rationally Speaking. I am Martin Turner. This is my colleague and co-host, Stuart Carrington. So what is REBT, Mr. Stuart Carrington?
Okay, so let me try to sum it up really short. I know we've sort of, on another cue card, we've got REBT pitch. I think what I would say is REBT is a philosophical approach to try to minimize emotional disturbance. And I guess what I would then go on to say is perhaps in a little bit more depth around what emotional disturbance is. But how would you answer that question?
Well, let me ask you a question about your definition, if you like.
Okay.
Philosophical approach. What do you mean by philosophical?
I think everything boils down to a philosophical question. So I guess maybe that word's surprising because people might say, well, it's a branch of CBT, or it's part of that family. It's a psychological method of intervention or model of consultancy, might be something else.
Yeah.
But we know that REBT has really strong roots in philosophy, in lots of different aspects, Western philosophy, Eastern philosophies as well. And the way I see it as sort of philosophical is that it distinguishes between negative healthy and negative unhealthy. And by doing so, I think it tries to promote acceptance that the part of the human condition is that we are going to feel like disturbance from some time. We're going to feel concern. We're going to feel anxiety. We're going to feel sadness. We're going to feel depression, anger, and so on and so forth. So what we want to do is try to charge ourselves with the emotional responsibility to regulate those emotions to be as adaptive as possible.
Okay.
And that's where I think the philosophical flavour comes in. Yeah.
Okay. What I thought you meant was it's philosophical, I suppose, beginnings.
Okay.
Which I suppose is tied into it.
Its roots in Stoicism, you mean?
Yeah. You mentioned it, its roots in philosophy, but it's kind of, for me, RBT, because its roots are in philosophy, it kind of makes it part psychotherapy, but part kind of applied philosophy, like Stoicism, And I think that stretches into the goals of RBT. Philosophical change is something that you will see in the literature, something that we strive for. Often in emotion regulation science, in psychotherapy, in CBT generally, you would see cognitive change or cognitive reappraisal. I think with RBT, we're stretching for something a bit deeper. And for sure, there's cognitive change taking place, but it's philosophical change. Can we help the individual to shift the philosophy of life that they have that isn't working? Speaking to your unhealthy negative, your dysfunctional emotion, can we help them shift that to a philosophy of life that will work better? And then evidence will tell us whether that's the case or not. So there's a scientific aspect to that.
Sure.
So for me, it's sort of two things. It's the philosophical background steeped in Stoicism and Epicureanism, and you mentioned Eastern philosophies too, rather than an empirical basis, which is more like cognitive therapy. So it's that bit. And then for me, it's like part one of the main goals of RBT is philosophical change.
Yeah. When you say philosophical change, I guess to clarify that a little bit more, one thing that springs to my mind, and I want to know what your thoughts are on this, is this view that we don't have to have like a binary or definitive evaluation about anything. So nothing is completely good or nothing is completely bad. Likewise, I'm not completely good and I'm not completely bad. I will just do good and bad things, or make mistakes and do good things as well. Is that, would you say, philosophical change or cognitive change, or are those two things completely intertwined?
Well, I think that when you think about cognitive change and you think about cognition, it springs to mind thoughts, the things that are in your head at the time. And I think that just because something is in your head at one moment doesn't mean to say it's your philosophy of life or philosophy of the world, or a kind of a tacit belief that follows you around. It could just be in that moment. I say to myself, you complete idiot.
Yeah.
Now, I don't mean it. I don't believe it. It's not my philosophy of myself or the world, but the cognition is there in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why in RBT there is a focus on belief, this idea or philosophy you have, how you see things, the rules that you set up about yourself, about the world, about other people.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, the cognitive aspect is like what's in your head at the moment. I think RBT tries to go beyond that a little bit. Not to say that those cognitions can't affect things and affect outcomes and affect, how you feel and how you behave. But if they're time limited, then often the route is to not take them seriously.
Yep.
Rather than to take that cognition super, super seriously and completely hook yourself to it. I think that RBT tries to get you to go against that a little bit and say, okay, fine, you've got all these things swimming through your head, but which of those reflect your actual beliefs and ideas of yourself and the world? And that's what it tries to get into, that philosophical aspect rather than the cognitive piece. Okay. Obviously, you're making it cognitive doing RBT work by bringing it into somebody's conscience, and then you're trying to work with it at that cognitive level. But you are, after all, trying to instantiate philosophical change that they carry with them that eventually they don't have to think about and cognitize.
Yeah.
This is just how I see the world. And we've all met people like that, where there's a bad situation has happened and they're like, look, it's not the end of the world. That's usually not them asking themselves, what do I think about the situation? How can I change it to be more rational? That's them expressing their rational idea of the world. That's just how they see things.
Yeah.
And it's expressed in that moment.
I guess a couple of things from your discussion there that spring to mind. Well, first, I guess we'll come on to this, is you said, oh, that's not irrational, that might be rational. So we need to kind of have a discussion, I think, at one point around what we mean by those terms.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it might be different to what the listeners think. The other thing is this notion of when it's going to sort of change how someone might view the world. And I actually found in my applied work with individuals, that was actually kind of the most fruitful aspect of it. And sometimes we would kind of deviate away from the cognitive therapy side and actually have that open up that discussion and talk about identity and talk about what our worth is and can we even value worth and self-esteem. Is that a tangible thing, or is this just a complete myth? When we had these discussions, I found that they really hit home with people because it's probably something they hadn't analysed before.
Yeah, for sure. And I think RBT gives you the license to go into those conversations sort of forthrightly.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it.
With people that want to do it. Yeah. So it's you're never, I suppose, forcing people into those philosophical conversations. And you don't even have to use the word philosophy or belief or cognition. These are obviously technical terms that we're using. If the individual is willing to go in that direction, then there's lots to be gained in REBT from that. If they're not willing to, then that's fine. There's lots of things we can do. But I think that's one of the nice things about REBT for participants, for want of a better word, who do have a philosophical lean. Like, okay, there's this deep... there's this kind of richness to REBT because it's steeped in Stoicism that you can go really deep into. And for people that are keen to do that, they get a lot of value from REBT because of that. It's not all, what's the goals? What are we trying to do? We're constantly driving towards those goals. There is lots of time and space there to just philosophically, just discuss, you know what I mean? About the way that the individual sees the world and themselves and what is value? Can we value a human being? As you said, their myth of self-esteem, is that something worth aiming towards? Is it something we should remove from our language in this interaction we're having as client and practitioner? I think those are things you can openly discuss. You can kind of set the ground rules and you start to understand pretty quickly whether the individual wants to go into that territory or not. You don't have to, but if you do, there's lots in REBT to talk about with that person.
I'll tell you what, something that I've really picked up on it, you mentioned, you might even be aware of this, but a few times you mentioned this, and I think we can add this into our REBT is answer. It's something that we as practitioners do with the participant. It's not, we don't do it to the participant. You use this wonderful term in your book, the rational practitioner.
just get that in there.
Good plug. Where's it available from?
Everywhere.
You use the term scientists in cahoots.
Yes. Yeah.
And I really like that approach. And when I have worked with individuals around this, I think that's really well received. It kind of, you create a very balanced power dynamic as opposed to I'm an expert and I'm going to tell you how to think.
Yes.
It's more, I'm inviting you to think about how you view the world. And is your view helping you, or would you like to change it?
Yeah.
And then you mentioned another sort of related point that you mentioned there is, and if they don't want to, that's fine. Like, we can work on other things as well.
Yeah.
So it's very much a balanced kind of neutral partnership with REBT. So I think we can add that in. So REBT might be a philosophical approach. It's a cognitive therapy, and it's something that is done together.
It's a collaboration.
That's a better way of putting it.
And I think the literature is pretty clear on this in psychotherapy, the idea of work in alliance or your therapeutic relationship or therapeutic alliance. These are terms that might be familiar to people. But, the misconception of REBT is that it does away with that. And it's like, here's the framework and the model. My job is to get it into you. And then if I get the sense that there's irrationality within you, then I'll extract it and challenge it forcefully. And it's not really that. That's what it boils down to when you have to write about it. Because you're trying to figure out, if you're writing a paper, you're trying to figure out how to express what REBT is very, very quickly, so you can get to the method, the results, and the point of the paper. And that's sometimes the downside of accessing, empirical academic literature. It has to tell you these things quite quickly. Whereas when you practice it and train in it and read professional practice works, then you see that it's more nuanced, and the work in alliance is actually quite an important part of it. And if you don't get that bit right, then it's very unlikely that REBT is going to work, particularly when you think about the nature of the conversations that you're going to have.
Yeah.
So, for example, say in the extreme case, you have a client who's very willing, capable, and able to go into that philosophical side. How I see the world, what value is, what I demand versus what I want. If you've got somebody that's willing to do that, then you're kind of meeting them at the door, and saying, "Yeah, we can do that."
Yeah.
If that person doesn't want to do that, then you're not making them do it. You're not saying, "Well, this is REBT. This is what we do." So you're constantly in. You're trying to harness that work in alliance enough that you can cater for what the individual wants to do. They're driving the work.
Yeah.
There is person-centered ideas within REBT and humanistic ideas, which we can get onto. So if you're able to do that, then that collaboration can work quite nicely. As soon as you take that person into places that they're thinking, why are we doing this? Then you start to strain that collaboration.
So now, with this let's build upon this REBT is, I would say that one word that we could use to finish that sentence, REBT is effective, and perhaps that reason, or that cause, is why it's effective. So that collaboration, it's not us telling someone what to do, or this is how we might think, or this is how we might view the world.
Yeah.
It's, okay, so what do you want to do? And we wouldn't necessarily push or try to change that person's viewpoint if they didn't want to do that. And that maybe the efficacy of REBT lies in part to that process.
Yes, I agree. If I was to have a stab at what REBT is, I would say it's a psychological approach rather than, there's lots of approaches. It's an approach to psychological therapy that recognizes the role of beliefs, perception in our emotions and behaviours. Kind of at its simplest form, that's kind of what it is. That allows it to sit in the family of behaviour therapies. You extend that and you get into the specifics of REBT. Now, it depends whether you think the specifics matter or not. Certainly, the specifics obviously matter when you're practicing and when you're writing about it and doing research. But for the general audience, the specifics might not matter. I think, in fact, if you have a conversation with somebody, maybe it's a very brief interaction with a client, and they come away with the understanding that my thoughts and beliefs play a role in how I emote and how I behave, then that's a decent job. That's
Yeah.
a decent job. Just understanding that foundational level is sometimes enough for people to get something from that interaction and to take that with them, and then do all kinds of things with it that are unconstrained by theory and process. So I think it's worth bringing it all the way down to those basics. Like, it's an approach to psychological therapy that recognises perception and beliefs, essentially, in emotions and behaviour. Now, we can get specific in RBT on what do you mean by beliefs? What do you mean by perception? And then you're into specific RBT ideas. But you could approach the same question from a cognitive therapy perspective, from an ACT perspective. You'd have similar but different answers.
Now, I appreciate we're going to be a little bit biased in the way that we might kind of treat REBT in light of some of the different approaches you just mentioned. But I think it's worth pointing that, again, we could say REBT is a continually evolving or refined approach. So Ellis, the founder, Albert Ellis, the founder of REBT, when it went through lots of iterations, and that those iterations derived from the continual refinement, questioning, trying to falsify this approach. And Ellis himself was a trained psychoanalyst and kind of highlighted or realized some of the limitations of that particular approach. Now, of course, we're perhaps going to be a little bit, I say REBT bias. We clearly have a preference for this, but I think that word bias implies that we're overlooking the limitations of it. And I don't think we do that.
No, we're trying to express what REBT is and sometimes the benefits of REBT and how it works. And we obviously believe in it to the extent that we've seen that it's effective, and we've read the efficacy literature and we've practiced it ourselves and seen it works. So yeah, we're biased to that extent. However, it's not the only thing that I use in my practice. It's not like it's REBT or nothing, and it's the best thing since sliced bread and all the rest of it. How I've seen my role in REBT is to just bring it to the fruition more. When I say bring to fruition, I mean more research, more conversation about it, get people using it more to see how far REBT can go and see the areas that it can fit into and not fit into. Am I an advocate of REBT? Yes, but I'm no more an advocate of REBT than other evidence-based approaches. You look at the evidence and say, well, what works with certain people in certain cases, certain situations, and you try to follow the evidence, So I hope that people view our conversations as individuals who advocate for REBT in a pure sense, rather than over and above anything else.
Sure.
It's like, we understand a bit about REBT. I practiced it for a while. I've done some research in it, so I know it's more than I know other approaches. So I'm happy to speak about it, more than any other approach. But yeah, it's kind of like, if people are interested in it, investigate it, train in it. But you don't have to. You don't become an REBT person, and that's just what I do now. I don't think that makes any sense within our field.
Well, Ellis would probably reject that as well, because it's quite an evaluative statement to make. I am an REBT person. He would reject all that I am. This is me. That sort of language.
Yeah.
So I study REBT might be more accurate, or I endorse this particular approach. Yeah.
I also think that you're trying to figure out the best way to practice. That includes picking up some psychotherapeutic skills, probably. There's obviously loads of different modes of practice that you can utilize. REBT can be flexible. It is flexible. It has some specific things to say about where emotions come from and how beliefs shape behavior. But it doesn't really. It's not prescriptive in how you would then go about dealing with that. So, if I go into a situation and I'm practicing REBT, I'm not doing really specific things to the point that it's formulaic and manualized. It's not that, they say this, so then do this, and then do that, and then here's step 4. I mean, any steps that we write about and read are purely to help people to understand, here's what a typical process might look like. And any order that you see is usually not the prescriptive order, because you can come back to things. For example, I do a 12-step thing in the book that says, here's the main steps, here's the main 12 steps. And one of them is work in alliance. Now, you're constantly doing work and alliance work. You're not doing it in like session one and going, well, that's done.
Yeah.
Now we're bonded, let's work together. Yeah. You're constantly doing it. So it's not prescriptive as a process necessarily. It's not prescriptive on what you should focus on. You know, it's broad enough and flexible enough to allow you to work in whatever mode you want to work in, at whatever pace that is appropriate for you and the client. But it does have some specific things to say about what it believes. I know I'm anthropomorphizing REBT, but what it believes is the deep root of dysfunctional being, if you like, both emotionally and behaviourally and cognitively. It does have something specific to say about that, and that often does drive the work that we do in REBT in a specific way.
Okay.